All right, hello again. Can I ask you to please put your headphones back and select the green color if you haven't done so yet? Hey. All right, can you hear me well? Yeah, perfect. OK, so we're approaching now the end with one last and very exciting session. This is called the Founder's Story, and it's basically a community and series of events gathering startups and founders. And it was born in Zurich, has been going on for 3 years now, and has expanded already to 15 countries. So you'll get to have a little bit of a flavor of what it kind of looks like. So we've heard basically different perspectives so far. First of all, from thought leaders, industry experts. And the only missing piece has been the founders, and basically how they can take technology and then create something amazing with it from scratch. So that's what we're going to do today. And for those of you who don't know the founder story or this series of events, I have a very short video just introducing the concept. And I'll just play it for you now before introducing the speakers.
Hi, my name is Hans, and I'd like to welcome you to the Founder's Story. The audience back then, still today, are other founders, keen on learning their stories, their challenges, how they overcome them, and make them become the startups who they are today. And from this very little room, it grew to this.
All right. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Hans Tran, Industry Lead of Digital Natives at Google Cloud. Okay, there you go.
Wow, wow, wow. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and congratulations to make it to the final episode of today, and for the first time, a special episode of the Founder Story here at Cloud Summit. Thank you very much. How's the energy level? Thank you, thank you. Good for you. So, my name is Hans, and I'm very excited to walk you through this special episode, because today, if you have spent time until now, you've heard from thought leaders, industry leaders, engineers, cutting-edge technologies, but one voice we haven't given enough stage today, and this one voice I'm passionately burning for. It's founders, it's entrepreneurs, because they are the ones who challenge the status quo. They are the ones who disrupt things. And today's episode, with a very interesting twist, they are also the ones who were former Googlers once. For those who have never been to the Founder Story, as you heard before, we started 3 years ago in Zurich here. Meanwhile, it has gone all around the globe, across many different countries, various different continents. And from a Zurich perspective, however, we like to always keep saying, wer hat's erfunden? We do this with the purpose of serving the community. Founders which sometimes feel really underserved, especially in conferences like this, where really leaders of large companies get their stage, and this is why we started it. But we have never would have achieved that scale without all our partners, which you see here. The ETH AI Center, in fact, will be back here next week with their own summit, and we really applaud those partners who helped us growing this community of what it becomes today. Hands up in all of the audience, who of you are here for the first time at the Founder Story? Wow. So for those, keep your hands up. Who has never been to a Founder Story? Or again, for the first timers. The returning ones, they know why I'm doing this. Because after every episode, and you can trace my profile back on LinkedIn, it is true, I post this picture on my profile, congratulate, debate, discussing the topics we bring here on stage, because it's the insight what the founders bring on stage, which gets us truly inspired, and hopefully, and as you can see here from the community, is always an engaging. Feel free to use the hashtag, the Founder Story GCP. to continue the engagement and the discussion. So it shall not only be the voices of the three people here today. Most importantly, we want to say a huge thank you for all the founders over all these years who have taken their time out of the busy days, joining us on stage, and most importantly, be vulnerable and share their insights from moments which is unseemingly very not stage-worthy. Right? When they were facing this blood, sweat, and tears moment, when they were standing in front of a moment where they're like, okay, how am I possibly going to solve that? And to go back to those moments and bring that back on stage to discuss openly with an audience like this, it takes huge vulnerability, so we really applaud and thank every single founder who take their time out of their daily life. Today's topic, as we said before, is all about how former Googlers left the corporate world and the tech world to found their own journeys. And in the title, you've heard it, how Google's contribution is to the startup ecosystem and how much that contribution looks like, you see it here. Measured by today's startup world in Switzerland, there are 115 startups existing which were created, co-founded, or even founded by former Google employees. That in return had a ripple effect of creating more than 1,700 jobs and creating roles for employees. Now, when you look at the stats, especially all my Google colleagues here in the audience and on the sideline as well, you might think, okay, well, that's a good stamp of approval to start creating my own company, because once I've gone through the Google school, then I have done the work. But some articles tell us that despite having been a Googler, it's not that easy still to found your own company. Nevertheless, I'm very excited that we have three founders here today on stage who managed to break down that barrier, create their own company, scale it to what it is today, and share the story how they got there. More interestingly, I want to find out from our speakers today is what concept have they learned from their time at Google and what works, even in a small startup scale, and what concepts is something we sometimes see and think like, oh, as Googlers, that's beautiful, but it isn't so applicable for a startup world. And we have a very open discussion, so I'm very excited in an unfiltered way from here, from our great lineup. Our lineup today is once again one of the best lineups we see in all the episodes. We have founders from different industry, from the people who had business in the travel industry, in the legal space, as well as, and that's a very interesting one, creating protein using AI and ML. We want to learn more about that later. So ladies and gentlemen, in one order of the other, please welcome me for my first panelist, Pascal Mathis. He's a co-founder of GetYourGuide. GetYourGuide, a household name when you book your next trip, and I'm sure, maybe hands up, whoever has booked something on GetYourGuide, proves my statement that this is a household name. This success has had such an impact, so much so that he went on to help other startups becoming successful, and then is now a partner of Founderful, an investor for early stage startup. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Pascal Mathis. My next founder here coming on stage is Yannic Kilcher. He's a co-founder and CTO at DeepJudge. The fun fact here is, even though he has worked at Google, probably, we've heard it today, one of the largest and if not most preferred search engine in the world, he leaves a search engine company just to create another search engine. At DeepJudge, the search engine, however, takes a level deeper and helps you to make sense and I mean, I don't want to repeat Google's mission statement, but help you to make sense of the data in a legal space. So who does not enjoy more reading through lengthy legal articles and then finding out by the end of the day that they don't even understand what it says? DeepJudge helps to solve that. Additionally to his day job as a CTO, he also runs one of the largest, if not the largest, ML research YouTube channel. All that from his basement. And if you take all the subscribers from his channel, I think you could possibly fill even the Hallenstadion. So there's a bit of work there and passion definitely going there. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Yannic Kilcher. My third founder, Danciu. He joined Google when there was only 12 employees. We had a bit of a history travel today in some of the session where you learned how long we've been in, Google, in Switzerland with Google, almost from the earlier days. So naturally, when you're joining Google and that early, it can happen that you had your fingerprints on some of the Google's product, which we all use today. Who of you have a Chromecast device at home? Whether it's a Nest Hub, Google Chrome. So he still today owns the pattern for the CAST protocol running those devices. So I'm but after 12 years, Daniel, after some journey, is becoming now the co-founder of Cradle. Totally different company, totally different industry, and they use AI and ML to help you to speak proteinish. I want to later learn from Daniel what that means and what language that is, because we use large language model to translate a lot of stuff today. But proteinish, I've never heard from. So please welcome on stage Daniel Danciu. Thank you very much. So thank you all for, again, taking your time and joining us here in this panel today. And very, very excited to dive into some of the topics I just mentioned. So I want to start with the first topic, because when we, and I'm sure some of the audience might agree today as well, when you look at Google, what is the size today in Zurich, right, with over 5,000 employees, multiple campuses, it is easy to say that, well, Google has become so big, it became almost a magnet for all the talents, and by doing so, taking all the talents away, and especially my heart beats for the startups, and it will become very, very difficult for startups to find even more talents, right? Because they're all being sucked up. I want to open that myth and pass it on to you, Pascal, first, because you are also through Founderful seeing into a lot of different startups as an investor. And is that statement true or not?
Yeah, this is something my investors, so the money we invest, we have to get from somebody. And this is exactly what they tell me. They said, yeah, it's great that Google is here in Zurich, but they eat up all the talent. And often it's true. It's hard for a young founder to give the same salary or to give the same perks as free food and all the other things we enjoyed when working in the Zurich office. But sometimes this monster also spits out then Google employees who went through a great school and learned a lot, and these you can then hire, because these guys, they want to be in a much smaller company or build a smaller company and are very well trained. So yes, the monster eats them, but also they come out and are often very good founders. So we like to invest in ex-Googlers.
That's very interesting perspective. I challenge that a little bit because, of course, you were on the business side, right? And while talking to investors, that sounds like a beautiful pitch. But I want to double down from an engineering perspective, right? Because that's probably what the public voice is talking about when they're talking about talent drain. As engineers with your background, how do you see that perspective, Yannic?
I mean, it's hard to say. Some people are drawn to big corporations because it gives them, like, you push a little lever and you have a lot of downstream effect, but also you're very boxed into only pushing one or two little levers, right? Mm-hmm. So I agree that some people, they are, no matter how much you pay them, there's probably an amount you could pay them, but you know, you could probably, you don't have to compete on salary or something like this to really get really good people, because they're interested in doing a lot of different things and being generalists. And generally at a startup, you get to do that. And in a giant company, you don't get to do that. You're an SRE for that little button of calendar, right? And your job is to make that as good as possible. And so I think it's more a personality trait than an engineering skill trait or anything like this. Just, there are competent and incompetent people everywhere.
Talking to, and I want to really stress test that notion, right? Because it sounds very beautiful. It's like, oh, perfectly scripted. We're all happy about Google here. If you were to talk about to your engineer self when you were still at Google, knowing what you know today at the startup world, what would have convinced you to take the leap into the insecure startup world where there's no safety net?
I mean, we still live in Switzerland, right? So there's always you won't be homeless or something like this, and you're still an engineer, so you will probably find work relatively easily. And I think, yeah, to the original point, given that the tech giants are here, that also creates an ecosystem around them that really kind of draws in more talent, builds more people who are interested in this kind of stuff, like events and all. It draws people. So I think in general it's a benefit, and it gives people in these companies the possibility to do something else because there is that ecosystem. Right?
I can support that with a fact, if I may.
Yes.
30% of our employees have been at Google before, right? So
30%.
30%, and most
Wow.
of them have moved to Switzerland because they wanted to work for Google. So factually, you cannot counter that, right? Google was an attractor of talent. The talent we don't have to regard as static. People go to Google, they learn, maybe they have a financial security that they reach, that they're comfortable to try something more adventurous, and then they would go for a startup. Or they feel like they want to do something that's more meaningful, something they're more passionate about now that they are financially secure. So having these ecosystems such as the Silicon Valley, or in our case, Zurich, where there's Microsoft, Apple, Google, all these large companies to attract talent, are great for startups.
I remember your personal story, right? Like, what was the time frame you gave yourself to move to Switzerland for? Like, what was
All right, that's embarrassing. I joined Google saying that I would be there for 1 year and then I would move back. I come from Romania originally, and I was very happy there. Actually, I had no intention of joining Google. That's a longer story. I'll tell you another time. Anyway, 12 years later, I was still at Google, and this is when I joined a different startup. So.
Yeah. And that's what you say also exactly with the ecosystem, right? You come here with a hypothesis, you want to test the environment and just to see if it's a place for you to be in. And your personal story, I think, speaks volume, right, of how much that ecosystem is nurturing themselves. So now that we understand, okay, it's a bit of a, I was trying it. I was really trying to prove me wrong with the hypothesis.
The three founders at Cradle never knew each other. They are all from Google. And they actually met each other through their social network that was Google-based. So that's another, aspect and support of this. Although we never met in person, the social network we created at Google had us met.
By the way, the founders didn't quite know each other so well also before today's panel discussion. And I think that's a good evidence also to see, like, that you go out and do your thing, right? And then you cross-pollinate and you start.
I have to admit, I watch these videos.
Yeah, it's the largest ML research YouTube channel, so you shall be forgiven.
All right.
Being an AI company, also, I think that's a good chance, and I think it's a huge compliment also for you, Yannic. Let's pick another topic. Well, who here has been once to a Google office? Maybe. I mean, we've heard some people asking us, is this the Google office today? And I can assure you it's not. We're actually very close by, though, in Zurich at Europale. And for those who have been there, you've probably seen some pictures, with all the perks, with the pool table, foosball table, massage rooms, they do exist. And then on top of that, people were like, yeah, well, you Google, you do that to keep the people there for forever and until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening, right? So they work a little bit more. But I can assure you, like, if you go back at 6 o'clock today at the office, you don't see a lot of people, in fact, because they also have a private life. What they do, however, those spaces intend to do is a concept called casual collision. Casual collision, for those who don't know it, is the idea that you casually or accidentally bump into a colleague, right, in a place like a micro kitchen and hangout area. You see a lot of places today as well with casual collision potential. Those places are very specifically designed so that you will talk about the problem differently than you might do it in front of your desk, okay? So we've kind of demystified it a little bit, right? It doesn't mean that just as a startup you have to put a pool table in a table tennis just to create a cool space. But now you know a bit more the concept of casual collision. How do you create your office culture in Cradle?
Well, the simple answer is have a good coffee machine. That is casual collision. Everybody will gravitate towards it. And then people will naturally start chatting around the coffee machine. And hey, what you're doing today, how was your day, what you're working on. And this is how ideas are being sparked. The other way is we have an open space, just like here, our whole office is open. Nobody has their own office with closed rooms. So that people overhear conversations. Sometimes this has a drawback of people being disturbed, but overall, we think that these open spaces are great for people collaborating, for fostering collaboration.
Maybe we should work with the silent event headphones a little bit, because I feel it's started to become a thing with those headphones now, but for ambient noises. But yeah, so you have a lot of place also to mingle as well. And
Yeah.
has that changed, would you say, after the pandemic area, where the idea of office space design, or was that always from the get-go?
It has been affected, right? After the pandemic, working from home became like a completely acceptable and normal thing, and we adopt this too, where we allow our employees to work from home a few days a week, but we do ask them to come in regularly such that they collide naturally with their coworkers, such that we have a higher bandwidth communication. So it has changed, but we still are trying to discourage fully remote work because we feel the bandwidth, especially in a startup, is lower. And in a startup at the beginning, you need a lot of communication. There's a lot of effort and a lot of brains that need to work together to make it successful. So from this perspective, we prefer if people sometimes come into the office on a regular basis, a few days a week.
Hans, you wanted to have a critical feedback, you said in the first question. So I see this a bit more critical. If the founders do the office too nice and concentrate too much on 10 different coffee machines, then I would say
10 is bad, you need one. They have to collide, no 10.
Okay, but I would say I agree as long as you have an office. So there is nowadays these people, they are scattered around the globe and try to build a great product. Yeah, for me, what I usually try to convey is, hey, have an office, and then yes, you will run into each other maybe. But I don't. Yeah, they should just do the work, not build great palm trees and ping pong tables. And so I'm a little bit on the fence on this.
So you were not on the ping pong table at Google times?
I was a really bad ping pong. I lost against my boss on the second days, and then I stopped it.
I like it. I mean, for those who didn't get the drill, obviously we're not talking about office spaces, but collaboration as a topic here, right? And especially from your perspective, Pascal, because as an investor, when startups come to you and pitch for their startups, and they talk about all sorts of things, right? It's a bit of a health scan, basically, right? About their culture. What are the things you look out for then in the cultural design of the startup, right? You just mentioned before, come in and do the work, but how can that, because I want to especially give it for the founders in the audience, what can they learn from to create a good company culture?
Yeah, this is now a very, very deep question, and it's exactly what we try to find. And I think it all starts with the founding team, and this is our X-ray. We just try to figure out what motivates them. It seems that you wanted to change the world. That's why you build something. If, for instance, you want to get rich very fast, then I will never invest, because then they try to shortcut to come to a solution. Then you won't build something. Yeah, we just look for good people in the end. So we often take them out for lunch, and then I would check. They think that the thing is over, that I'm not X-raying them anymore, but I will check if they are nice to the waiter, and this kind of thing. So we really try to back nice people, because then the culture will evolve from the founders. But if they present me a culture plan, I will not invest, because this is not. Why should this be your prioritization? There is so much work. You cannot just work and set up a culture. You have to be the culture in a way.
It's a story, a fictional story I always love to tell. Is like, if a company creates a role called head of culture or the chief culture officer, then you offload the responsibility to another role, right? Sticking with culture, Yannic, I also had the pleasure to visit you in the office once, right? And I've learned in the previous briefing as well that you do ask the people to come into the office, right, to mingle. And especially in the startup world, I can guarantee you, finding a lot of office space is very, very hard. So sometimes it gets narrow and cramped. But what do you see good things coming out when people coming to the office for the culture?
I mean, I agree with the communication bandwidth. It's just not something you do when you're on a Slack or something, or via calls. You set those up when you need to discuss something, and not when it's just so much easier to walk up to someone or to hear something that other people are discussing, and then they're about to do something wrong, right? You can intervene or something. So this, I agree, it creates also distractions sometimes, but in general, the benefit of coming together and working together as a team, it's a lot better from a work culture. But I also think what it does is it builds friendship. And I think as a startup, you need to be friends. Like, there's no amount of compensation plan you can put up and whatnot that would make the people actually put in that effort and the care into what they do. They actually have to care for what they do, but they also have to care for the rest of the people around them. So kind of being, everybody being, good people, being friends, being genuinely interested in the well-being of everyone else is important, and that's just a lot more easy to facilitate when people come in. Obviously, it depends on who you hire. If you hire kind of jerks and egotists and whatnot, and then you bring them together, it's probably exploding a lot faster than it would otherwise.
Yeah. I think your intuition is well supported by research. I think one of the most important factors for retention, of employee retention, is actually the colleagues and atmosphere at work. It's more important than salary, and about as important, surprisingly, as commute.
You naturally pivoted actually already to my next topic, because it's the culture and the people especially you want to find, right? Because there's a term, whoever have done the Google interview, there's a category called Googliness. So when you go through a Google interview, there's besides testing you on your skill level, on your roles, there's a interview category called Googliness, which is basically testing you if you fit into the team and if you become a good team member, right? And that costs you no money, right? You don't have to be a heavy salary-backed company to test that part of a good employee. Pascal, you mentioned that you take people out for lunch and see how they behave. How is the hiring process, for example, at DeepJudge? Like, is that something you categorically seek out already in your interview process? Or you just also want to feel that person like on a bit more generic way, so to speak?
I think it's one of the major contributors. So we don't have an interview that's called, Googliness or culture fit or anything like this. We invite people, and they have kind of architecture, design interviews, whatnot, whatever role they interview for, and in spending 2 times 1.5 hours with them, you will notice whether they, how kind of their personality is, and whether they genuinely are interested in the things they do, or whether they have some other motivation. You learn that quite quickly, I feel, even in a short amount of time. But I think people do that naturally. It's only probably once you scale up beyond our size, when you have to processify things, that things become hard, because I don't know, the Googliness, I always felt it was more a bit of a thing that, the people who's like, clean the toilet after yourself, be googly.
It's a very often used
probably
common
hard
word,
to keep it going once you kind of grow beyond a certain size.
So you do agree at some point it still should be, a foundation for the hiring process, and it can be a bit more compartmental?
It's important, but how you achieve it, you probably have to ask. We're like 30 people now, you probably have to ask people.
Yeah, I mean, we're 40, but we have a similar process like you. So candidates at the very end of the process do come on site for nearly a day, and we spend some time working together. Then we go out for lunch together, casually, so that we see how do we get along as humans. Do we have the same shared values? Are we kind? As you mentioned, are we kind to the people around us? And then after the interview is done, we go out for drinks. See, could we be friends? Could we enjoy each other's company in a way? And you have to be careful here, because you also want a diverse team, and you don't have to be necessarily friends with everyone that you hire, but you do have to have some shared or basic shared values. And this is what we are looking for, but at the same time being careful to not squash diversity by only hiring people that are exactly like us.
Maybe just maybe a hint even. So when I left GetYourGuide, we were 120 people, and hiring took me a lot of my time, and I thought maybe I'm doing something wrong. And after 2 years or so, we said, hey, let's move the hiring part to employees. And this was a big mistake. So don't even try. If you spend, as founders, a lot of time hiring the right people and doing this social check, because it's chemical in a way, you are the chemistry guy here. So then, I would spend a lot, like if my founders invest a lot of time on the hiring, also in year 5, 6, 7, it's good. It's good spent. Where else could you spend your time? Instead, you multiply yourself by hiring the right people, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I jokingly say that whenever we hire somebody, they have to be better than me at whatever they do. And as you say, you multiply yourself by hiring people that are really talented.
I love that. this is a very, I feel, a very applicable advice, and it's very easy to neglect as well, right? Like if you want to create your own product, you just want to focus on having a good service or a good software, which you can scale very quickly, right? But if you neglect the cultural part early on, right? You mentioned it, if you hire jerks, they're going to stick around for some time as well, and that becomes like a systematic poison also to the company, right? And to pay attention from the early on, that is, I think, the key lessons here. Again, takes no money, a little bit of effort and focus to do so. Now, I see the time running out, but I still want to give it a little space because we are here today at Google Cloud Summit, and it wouldn't be a proper conversation without talking technology. I especially want to address you, Yannic, and Dennis. What are, the world has exploded in AI and ML. It feels like everyone has waken up. And like, what are the technical solutions you are most excited about in the recent development of that space? I'd probably start with
Personally, obviously, working in the intersection of machine learning and biology, I'm very excited about the way machine learning models can help make biology better, can help us understand biology. What we do at Cradle is we try to make proteins better. And when I say protein, I mean it could be a vaccine, it could be an antibody, it could be an enzyme that catalyzes chemical reactions and produce perhaps 60% of the stuff that we consume as a human. All this could be produced with the help of proteins. So if you manage to make this just a tiny bit better, it can have a gigantic impact in the way we produce stuff in a more environmentally friendly way, for example, because biology is non-pollutive in general, by definition. Organisms tend to die when there is pollution. So I think these applications and the huge leaps that started with AlphaFold, developed at DeepMind, and the huge leaps that synthetic biology and machine learning applied in synthetic biology has made, I think will change the way we as humans, I'm not exaggerating when saying we as humans live and will live in the next 20 years. The cool kid on the block was machine learning. Watch out for synthetic biology plus machine learning. This will be the new cool kid on the blocks.
Yannic, from your YouTube hat on, you scan the market. You have probably a really, really good overview. What's your take on that?
It's hard to follow up changing the way we live as humans. But,
I'm modest, sorry.
no, I think so far, kind of let's call it the information revolution has done a lot in terms of how we handle data, but it was mostly structured data. And I think with the newer kind of statistical methods in like machine learning, we've been able to get this grasp on unstructured data, on natural signals like video, images, sound, and all of this, and also language in a sense. Yes, it's character by character, but in essence, it's a natural signal. It kind of flows. There's no real rules to it.
Just like DNA, by the way.
Just like DNA, yeah. So the ability to grasp this data, I think, has just recently kind of fallen into our hands in a way, and very excited about what we can do in all of these domains. Kind of the final leap of computers being something that you program very systematically to something that you work with and that you kind of more teach together in the natural world is very exciting.
I love it. I can't help to feel the excitement myself, hearing from an engineering perspective, because that's, I think, the ultimate stamp of proof is that there is something going on rather than just a fancy marketing slide. Now, to close this topic off, however, from an investor perspective, I've heard rumors that unless you have the word AI in your pitch deck, you're not going to get funding money whatsoever. What's your perspective on when startups come to you and say, look, we're an AI company?
Yeah, for us it's different. So for 80% of the funds, you're right. So we are trying to find unsexy markets. So for instance, we invested in a wheelchair which can climb stairs. I don't like when a market is crowded, and we saw so many hypes, 3D printing, blockchain, now it's AI. So when you put AI on the deck, and maybe I have seen your deck half a year before, there was no AI, and now you have the AI sticker. This will take me 2 seconds to put to the trash. So we go a bit deeper, and even worse if you put AI and then this gentleman will tell me that there is nothing proper, then you're even a liar almost. So for us it's almost hindering to have AI big on the deck.
it became a little noisy.
It's too much noise.
And to really see through that. But I love that you pointed at the right direction to close it off, stress test it, and I mean ultimately, and I think we all agree here, it's the user who is going to determine whether it's a good company, product or service, what we offer, and not the technology stack. Thank you very much, dear all panelists. And when we close off in a second and open up for questions for the audience here, I also want to thank again, we saw today, it's a community approach, and one of our largest allies here in the startup scene is, of course, the largest entrepreneur podcast channel here in Switzerland, Swisspreneur, for those who don't know it yet. And if you weren't satisfied with some founder story today, feel free to scan the QR code and get more stories on their platform. Again, one of our strongest partners. And before we close off, I want to open now to some questions for the audience. And again, it should not only be us here discussing, and we have some colleagues here with, I believe, microphones who can circle around for some questions. And maybe the ones with the microphone, can you put your hands up to make yourself visible? Exactly, so we will have someone coming to you. So hands up if you have any questions to what Proteinish is, how to scale a YouTube channel, and how to get some investments for your next startup. I can break the ice if you don't want to. We have a question here at the front.
I have an interesting question, which is slightly different from the people here. The question is, as a Googler, you understand the technology, you have been there in the market and you see what it is. And for the people who are not in Google who want to be an entrepreneur, is there anything like a special sauce that you earned in this period that helps you in this journey that we can acquire without being in the Google school?
Something you can apply from the learnings at Google without having gone through the Google school. That is the question, right?
One idea, hire the best people you can. That's one idea I learned from Google. Don't look necessarily at trying to lower the salaries. One talented engineer, I am not exaggerating here, I'm emphasizing this, can be worth 10 normal engineers. So it's better to really look for super talented people than for a larger number of, let's say, not so talented people. That is one big lesson that I learned personally and believing.
I mean, concurrent to that, being in such an organization, you learn just how many incredibly smart people there are, right? Because they're kind of bunched up there. If you're just go your life about in the city, you don't notice. But once the concentration is how you kind of feel that. I think that humbles you a bit and makes you think a bit more in, you have to be really special or good at something, because if you are not, one of these people is just going to do it in a better way than you do. So, yeah.
And maybe to add on this question, you don't have to go to Google to become an entrepreneur. I would even argue, you ask for us to be critical. If you spend too much time at the large organization, it does not have to be Google, but any, it will mess up with your entrepreneurial mind, and maybe you're not such a good entrepreneur anymore. Don't take it from me.
No, I actually agree. I've been there 12 years, so I can say it with,
exactly.
with maybe open heart that I am wary when I see over 10 years at Google on a resume. Although myself, I've been there 12 years. So.
Yeah. I mean, if I may take this question, because I'm a Googler too. Well, we're here at the Google Cloud Summit, so the best way to apply Google without being a Google is using Google Cloud. I'm joking, but I think what adds to this, hiring the best people, is also having a culture of imperfection, right? Because I think that is really inherently a Google culture too, is to not strive for having the finalized product, the finished, stress tested everything, do something, bring it out to the market, test it with the market, get the feedback loop in, and start continuously working on that. And I think this is and that works only if you get the right people in place, right? Because if you have people looking for perfection, that concept will fall apart. So I think I add the second puzzle piece to that, to have a culture where you don't strive for perfection, but with a great feedback loop. I see the timer clicking, so the very courageous one, last questions over there.
Great. Does that work? Perfect. Thank you so much for the keynote. It was really interesting. While I agree that Gen AI or AI certainly is a hype, I think there are direct effects to the market. For example, in software, competitive advantage dilutes much more quickly than before, from my point of view. And I'd like to know from the entrepreneurial side of things, how do you ensure that you can keep your competitive advantage? And from the investor side of things, how do you make sure that you find the right companies who can keep the competitive advantage in the software realm?
Yeah, a few ideas there. One is talk to the user. AI cannot talk to the user. You can understand your user deeply and create a product that they will love and that fills in a hole that they need. This is something that is truly important in order to create excellent products. And the second one is, repeating myself, hire the best people.
I would slightly disagree with the advantage in kind of software is the advantage in writing small apps is diminishing, because you can get that done in half an hour now than a couple of days that it would have taken an engineer before, which is wildly different from building something intrinsic and complex. So I don't see a big if you use the tools, you're better as a coder, but it's very different from building large systems, and that's again very different from building a product that actually is suitable, and those are not always the most complex programs that are the best for the users, right? So that's what it ultimately comes down to.
And from the investor side, my special weapon is the unsexy market. If I find a niche which is not so crowded, then you have a bit of time. But we also invest in sexy markets, and then I would invest in people like these guys. So if somebody picked up search at Google, then probably it's a good person to back to build a search engine. So be a bit smart about whom you invest your money in.
But I do agree with you. It's easier to catch up in the age of AI. It's easier for somebody to imitate something, to all your hard work to figure out the product, they can just imitate it easier. So you always have to be one step ahead.
Great, thank you very much for the closing questions. Very interesting. We heard today, technology can be a great part of a success strategy, but it's not the only one. Great people is equally as part of it, and what better place to find great people than today? I keep saying time is our enemy here on stage, but the uproar shall be our friends to continue the conversation. I kindly invite all of you to stay a little bit longer, because we have great minds here on stage. Pick them, have a conversation, deep dive your questions. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for taking time on this exciting session and also coming to Google Cloud today. On my behalf, also on the entire team's behalf, thank you very much.
If people want to chat, I'll be here for another 10-15 minutes.
Thank you very much for our panelists, and Hans as well for participating. So like Hans mentioned, now we have the apéro. So the corner of the apéro is just around here, so just behind the stage. So please feel free to join us, and hopefully you enjoyed the sessions today in our industry track, and you walk away with some learnings and some inspiration. Thank you very much.